Welcome to the WordPress Photography Podcast, the podcast for photographers who want to learn how to get the most out of WordPress to grow their photography business. You don't need to be a geek to understand WordPress. Settle back and listen as we show you how. Now, here's your host, Scott Wyden-Kivowitz.
Welcome to episode 29. My name is Scott Wyden-Kivowitz, and I'm joined by my co-host, Rachel Conley from Photoscribe. Hey, Rachel.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing well. So we just spoke to Seishu. That was a great conversation.
Yeah.
And I look forward to going up to Connecticut for CTPPA to teach all about WordPress. It's going to be a lot of fun. And we had a lot of news last week, or last episode, I should say. And this episode, we've got a little bit less news, but very exciting stuff to talk about. But we have a really good guest today. We have Angela Bowman. She is a WordPress instructor and custom theme developer from Boulder, Colorado. And she loves hiking. Makes sense. She's in Colorado. She loves travel, art, and backyard chickens. She has been working with WordPress since 2007 and teaching theme development, security, and a lot more since 2009. She is always excited about new technology and eager to share with others through local meetups. She's been a fan of NextGEN Gallery since she first discovered the plugin back in the day. And NextGEN Gallery has been around probably since she got into WordPress. And she's been teaching many WordPress users about that plugin and many other plugins and other image plugins, to be specific, on a regular basis. She teaches a lot of artists of all genres, including photographers and painters and pretty much any artist out there. She is one of the people educating. So welcome, Angela. We're really excited to have you on the show.
Yes, this is very fun. It's my first podcast. I love it.
Oh, exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. So before we dive into what's going on with you, let's talk a little bit about some WordPress photography related news. I am currently testing a new backup solution for WordPress, and I am loving it. It is the simplest I've ever experienced. It's similar to VaultPress, which is made by Automatic, which is basically what I mean by that is it is a how do I explain it? How do you explain it? What's the word you would use to explain how this works? Where it's not just full backups every time, but it's incremental is the word.
It's snapshots.
Yeah, snapshots.
Depending on which package you purchase.
Yeah.
Right, because they can do it daily, they can do it hourly, they can do it real time. Yeah. And you pay for those different categories.
So if you're familiar with Apple's Time Machine, it works this way too, where every whatever period of time it will do a backup of any new changes on your site, whether you're deleting or on your computer, whether you're deleting or adding new files to your computer. Apple's Time Machine will back up those or delete those from your backup, depending. So this plugin, it's called WP Time Capsule. I'm highly impressed. It's 100% free right now. They are working on a premium plan. I'm not sure what that will include, but right now it's 100% free. I'm getting 2 backups a day. And what they do is you have a choice to either back it up to Amazon S3 or to Dropbox or to Google Drive. So that's how they're making it free for you to use. Is they're not using their own servers to actually to host the backups. However, you do have to connect to their service, so their service actually handles the backups. Basically, their service pulls from your website and then sends it out to whatever cloud service you're using. So
does that mean it's doing it over FTP rather than like PHP? So you have things like, Backup Buddy and some of those plugins which time out on backups because of the way they handle it, whereas some backups that rely on more of an FTP connection don't have those same timeout issues.
So you're not even inputting your FTP. So I'm not 100% sure how they're actually doing it. But they could be doing it from like a web version of WordPress CLI, which is the command line interface. So they could be automating it that way. I'm not really sure.
Be a great question to ask.
Yeah, it doesn't time out. Because it's doing incremental, it's doing little files here and there. The original one took an entire day to do the original backup because it's still doing each file individually. It's not doing it in chunks. But it's amazing, and it's free, and the cool part is you can literally revert one day back, and you can revert individual files if you need to.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what they do with the premium.
The best part.
Yeah.
I mean, even Volpress you have to pay for, and you have to go through Jetpack, and there's, we've talked about Jetpack on this show a lot about it being bloated and having to turn on and off. And if you're, a sort of a beginner user, that's a scary concept. And then Backup Buddy has problems too. So there hasn't been a great 100% WordPress solution. So this sounds like a good entry into the market, and the price point is right. Have you noticed any server slowdowns? Because I guess that, like, the Broken Links plugin check, Broken Links checker plugin, and how that pulls server resources. That would be the first thing I would think of when I hear of this, and you haven't seen that? Yeah, no, because think about it. It's only doing one file here and there, right? So it's only doing individual files instead of constantly scanning everything, your entire site all the time. But as photographers, say you upload, and you shouldn't, but say you upload 100 5K, not 5K, but 5,000 pixel images to one blog post, and then that backup solution pulls that one change, and it's a big change. Yeah, but it's still going to do each image on its own individually. Instead of it doing the entire post in one chunk, it's going to do each file individually, and then you could literally revert one file at a time if you wanted to. And photographers don't upload 5,000 images to your website. Right. That's my PSA for that. Yeah. Don't do it. Now, again, this is a brand new solution, so for all I know, some people might be having bad experiences. All I know is, for me, it's been amazing. Now, I'm on Imagely hosting, so I get backups anyway, but it's nice having an extra backup. Yeah, always. Yeah, and the cool part is I can literally go to my Amazon S3 account and pull up every file right there, and it's duplicated. So I found... Oh, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, the challenge that I've had with, these solutions has been the setting up of the Amazon S3 account for the novice users. I was just going to go there too. Yeah, it's just really challenging. I taught it in my class. I literally have this step-by-step. I teach this backup and maintenance and security class all in one. And just that part is really challenging. Yeah. And Amazon hasn't made it easy to use S3, and I think that's on purpose because they're trying to make it as secure as possible, and they're trying to their clientele is not the average photographer. Right. So for any photographers looking to use WP Time Capsule, I would say consider Google Drive or Dropbox, depending on which one you're paying for and has the space. Right. Dropbox, I imagine, could have some delay and slowness, because in general, just getting files over to Dropbox is pretty slow. So I'm curious of how it would handle something like that. And of course, with twice daily backups, even though it's these incremental file backups, the thing that I guess I would be more curious about is you have the one backup, but then do you have revisions of those files? So for example, you're saying it backs up the whole site and then it just does files one at a time. So let's say you change your style sheet. Is it overriding the style sheet? Or is it saving multiple versions of the style sheet like Time Capsule would? Yeah, it's like Time Capsules. I mean. Yeah, it's like Time Capsule. So you have multiple versions. And I think the free version right now goes 30 days back. Yeah. So you have everything for 30 days. My guess is part of the paid solution will be increasing that vault. Yeah. Archive. So. Yeah. Anyway, we'll see. I mean, cool. But my take on it right now. It's the best one I've used ever. 2 thumbs up. Yay. 2 thumbs up. So I'm excited for it, And we talk a lot about backups because, and this is kind of moving us into the next news item, it's not a question of if your site will get hacked, it's a question of when, most times. Segue. So the next piece of news is for repeat site hack offenders. Now what I mean by that is your site gets hacked. Now, this goes for WordPress and non-WordPress, but we're talking WordPress here. So your site gets hacked. You pay a company to clean up your site and remove the hack. For example, maybe WordFence or Securi or SecuPress or any of those services that can actually clean up a hack for you. And then you get hacked again. Now, that's a repeat site hack offender.
for those offenders that are repeatedly getting hacked, Google is putting a 30-day window on site review requests, which means if you get hacked multiple times, you are no longer request a review. You're no longer able to request a review within 30 days. You have to wait. Yeah.
Wow.
So that means even if you fix that hack immediately, it doesn't make a difference. It means for 30 days, your site, at a minimum, your site will be flagged on Google as not safe.
So you have one chance
on the second one, on the second attempt.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. For repeat offenders only. This will happen for. Mm-hmm. So that's the importance of having backups, having security, whatever security plugin you're using, having hosting that's protecting you, and so on. Everything we've talked about now in 29 episodes of the podcast. You want to make sure that you are protecting yourself, because now it's going to hurt your brand for, if you're getting hacked more than once, it's going to hurt your brand, because now Google's going to leave it there on their search engine results for everybody to see that your site's not safe.
It seems really harsh.
It does, but I think that's their way to crack down on site owners that don't care.
Yeah, and also, the thing about backups, though, you have to be careful with and how we talk about backups, because to me, backups have not been so helpful in terms of hack recovery. It's good in terms of disaster recovery, but with hack recovery, the thing is that whatever vulnerable file, whatever vulnerability you had that caused the hack, if you restore your site to a quote unquote like pre-hacked version, you could just be restoring the vulnerability. And so I rarely, if ever, use backups in dealing with hack recovery.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So here's what my look on that. So if you know when you were hacked, right? Exactly when, which is easy to find out because on your server it'll say this file changed on this date, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And your host can tell.
We say easy in air quotes, Scott.
Yes, we do.
Air quotes. If your host can help you identify, right? So that makes it easier. If your host can help you identify when you were hacked, you can revert to a backup before that, if you have a backup that happened before that. And then you make sure that you update all of your plugins that might have been vulnerable before that hack.
So here's the reality.
Yep.
The reality is that most of these hacks, sites have been hacked for 2 or 3 years. And there's PHP backdoors on the site. So let's say you set up your new WP Time Capsule and you're backing up. And then the real hack didn't occur. The front-facing hack, the Google notices, didn't occur till last week.
Yeah,
you revert your files and you think you're okay. The problem with that is that you're not okay because you have these PHP backdoors that have been there for 2 or 3 years, and it was only just recently, exploited.
Yeah, that would be a scenario where any backup won't help. It's
any backup won't help, and I'd say typically the most typical hacks are these PHP backdoors, and they can most sites that I see that haven't been maintained or updated, I'd say all of them have been hacked, every single one. And the owner has no idea, and it can take a long time before a front-facing hack ever appears. But I just think site owners need to be aware restoring from the backup could get them into this trap that you're talking about, where they restore from the backup and they're like, I'm good, I've updated my plugins, I'm okay, and they get hacked again because it had nothing to do with even the plugins that are currently on the site.
Yeah. Well, and we should sort of temper this because our audience are photographers and they hear things like that and it's scary to them. This is part of what we preach about, updating your core WordPress and updating your plugins and making sure that, at least once a month, even if you're not blogging or you're not updating your website, you are going in there and making sure that these potential security vulnerabilities that are existing in another world outside of photography, you're addressing them. But then, hack recovery is a scary thing because most of photographers are solopreneurs and they're doing this on their own. Yep. And so that's where we really talk about making sure you have a good relationship with your website host and reaching out to people who do this for a living when something happens and not just... the other thing about using WordPress as a service that I like is that they have the power of Automatic behind it, and that includes the power of the people of Automatic.
And they offer hack recovery as well.
Right.
On certain plans.
Right. So, I mean, there's the question of, just having a backup and just having a file. There's one plugin that a lot of photographers use it, and it drives me crazy. It's something like WP Backup. It's very simple. It does the same thing in that it just puts it in Dropbox and lets it. But for a long time, it was only capturing half of the conversation. It was only capturing like the image stuff, but not your file stuff, but not your PHP stuff. So when photographers thinking they had a backup went to backup, they only had half of the solution, and they had no people to ask. So, yes, there are these conversations that need to happen, and I think it's good to be aware of it. But there is the preventative step in that. That's why, hiring the right people, hiring the right services that have people behind it to help you is where the maybe happy middle is.
Yeah, and I'd say, people go to extremes with talking about WordPress security, and it's super basic. Just strong passwords, keep everything clean, up to date, get rid of those oldie moldy plugins.
Yep.
Keep your
Old
files.
and moldy, I love it.
Yeah, just keep it, run a tight ship. Ship, keep things updated, use good passwords. Yeah. And I've never seen a site hacked under those circumstances unless it was a hosting kind of issue.
Right.
I'm a big fan of WordFence because of their scanner. I love the fact that their scanner picks up oddities and emails you if there's something that's strange, or it emails you if there's a plugin that needs to be updated, or a theme or WordPress or whatever. So, but there's a lot of security plugins out there as well that do similar things. I will say that if you are hacked, don't try to fix it yourself all the time. If your host can't help you, hire a company like Security that can do a hack clean up for you for like $100 or whatever it is. It's very affordable for a photography business.
And I also recommend Jim Walker, the hack repair guy.
Jim Walker.
The hack repair guy.
Yeah, I've never heard of him. That's great.
He's awesome. He contributes a lot to the WordPress Facebook groups, and nice. I've sent people to him for their hack sites. Because you kind of have to do it for a living.
Yeah, you really do. And you have to stay up on the vulnerabilities, for sure. Yeah. It's even, having a base knowledge of WordPress or more than a base knowledge, I've been approached, and it's like, no, not going to touch that. Because there's so many intricacies and, especially with photographers, your website is your storefront. So it really should be like, if you had a storefront, you'd sweep the floors, you'd clean the windows. You have to treat your website the same way, and knowing that there are chores that you have to do to keep it updated and to keep it secure and, make sure your password isn't password. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And WordFence also, and some of the others also allow you to do password security. So if a user on your site has or password auditing, I should say. If a user on your site has a bad password, you can force them to reset it. Or there's even plugins that just annually or whatever you set it to force every user on your site to change their password. So, which is a good practice to do. Yeah. There's also two-factor authentication. There's a lot of things that could be done.
WordPress core is definitely much better about that too. Like if you use a weak password, it makes you click. Confirm use of weak password. The auto password is usually one of a long string of numbers and stuff. So, they're definitely getting much better about it because it probably, from their point of view, if you think of WordPress core, and I say they, it's the open source community. It's a big issue for them, for everyone, that they're trying to solve.
My last note on this before we move into something happier than hacks is I recommend my personal recommendation for all photographers is to use a software like 1Password, if not use 1Password, because that way you're remembering 1Password for everything in your life, whether it's business or personal. You can have multiple vaults, but you can use super difficult passwords that will be nearly impossible to hack. And you don't even have to remember them. It's amazing. So
I didn't know you had to pay for that. So I just went to sign up for somebody else. I thought it was free. Okay, but it's only like $2.99 a month. It's totally worth it.
Yeah.
Totally worth it. I had a client call me in a panic because her Gmail account was hacked, and that led to her iCloud Apple ID being hacked. And it was pretty scary for her. And I had to spend an hour with her on the phone just figuring out how to, get her passwords reset because it's a nightmare, and that was a wake-up call to her. She was using the same simple password on all of her accounts.
Yeah,
that's I know. It's tough. I will say last on that, same related to 1Password, is listen to the episode with Brian Matiash. I can't remember what number episode it was, but we talked about 1Password a lot in that episode,
awesome.
including the ability of doing two-factor authentication with 1Password. So,
and we should talk quickly. Two-factor authentication is when you put something in and then there's another factor. So usually, like your cell phone, it'll ring there, and you have to confirm it. So
it's either a rotating PIN number, or it's a text message, or it's an email. Some sort of second way to authenticate your username and password.
Right.
So, it's awesome. It's the gold standard. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so, Angela, what is going on in your world these days?
Well, I just finished teaching a 6-week WordPress, I don't know if I could call it development builders course. I take beginning people who want to build sites for clients, A to Z through the process of making a WordPress site. So we install a local development environment using desktop server. We install theme plugins. I go through all the basics of how WordPress works, how the template hierarchy works, how the loop works, how template files work. And then we get into a lot of CSS and functions and hooks and how to work with a framework. And then take that all the way to now we need to migrate the site to the web host and change DNS and troubleshoot. And it's exhausting.
Yeah, it's a lot of technical stuff to have to teach.
And I'm really working with a lot of people in career transition, men and women, a lot of people in their 40s and 50s who had jobs. Maybe they were marketing people or graphic designers working in the print industry. And now they're realizing, wow, I need to know how to build websites.
Yeah. And you need to know how to build it on WordPress.
On WordPress. And you need to know some best practices. And people get really lost. So there's amazing tutorials out there. Team Treehouse, lynda.com, all these resources. But no one brings it all together.
Right.
Like in a, from A to Z. And so they have these bits and pieces. And so what I've done is brought it all together. And I had one woman drive 14 hours a week to come to my class.
Yeah.
Because she lived in a rural community where people need websites, but there was no training there. Right. And so I'm trying to kind of give a new life to people who want a career in WordPress and teach them some best practices. But a lot of them haven't had the computer science background or even HTML, CSS. And so it's exhausting.
We get a lot of migration people, like the career migration people in our in the New Jersey WordPress meetup. Also in the 40 to 50 age range usually. Some are a little bit higher in age, but the desire to learn WordPress, they all have this drive, and it's amazing.
Yes.
So it's nice that you're putting something out there to give people like that an opportunity to get it all in one place without having to dig around the internet.
Well, and think about, career transition is one conversation, and then, we can relate it back to photographers too, that you may have learned something else in college or in your secondary education, and now you're doing photography, but you also have to have these skills about using WordPress, using the web, using best practices, CSS, et cetera, I have a 4-year-old, and he is in Montessori school, and we were at a teacher's meeting, and she said, the jobs that your children are going to be doing don't exist yet. So how do you teach for that? And it sort of blew my mind. We were the generation of learning computers in, at whatever level you're at in school, and now all work-based things are school. So our parents, our grandparents, they didn't have those trainings, and yet they're expected to know how to use it. So I don't know. It's definitely a shift. My 4-year-old taught me how to use the filters in Snapchat the other day, and I was like, what is happening? And I'm very tech savvy, so I was he just had been around some teenagers, and they showed him how to use it, and he showed me how to use it, and I was like, this is so blowing my mind. But really I do want to mention too, WordPress just passed officially 27% of the web. So knowing WordPress specifically too at whatever point in your career is important, because it's definitely becoming one of the most utilized tools.
Yeah, and that's 2% jump in a year.
Yeah, it's huge.
And 2% of the internet is a pretty big jump. So
It's a lot of people.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, I'm looking at putting my course online. It's all online now on WP Courseware. It's just, I don't have videos with it, so I'm filling in a lot of the gaps in person when I teach, and all the step-by-step instructions are on my website for people, but I do need to kind of figure out how could this be delivered in a way that people remotely, where I'm not talking to them for 8 hours at a stretch, can get it.
It's great if you make it online and then anybody can get it at any point. It's a great thing to have. You're building your own Lynda and Treehouse, which is great.
And pulling in those resources. So I try to encourage everyone to sign up for Team Treehouse. That's my thing. So almost all my students sign up for Team Treehouse, and I'll give them specific lessons and assignments out of Team Treehouse to build up their CSS and HTML and JavaScript skills.
That's awesome. Between Lynda and Treehouse, that's how Imagely CEO, who Eric, he learned how to develop in a year of doing these online courses.
Yeah.
And using the virtual tools that they offer in Treehouse, and now he's doing all of our themes. So
So I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I just want to help people pull it all together.
Right. Well, I love that you do mention there is no course map. There's a lot of resources, but there's no A to Z. So as a photographer, you only have a limited budget. Would you recommend Treehouse or Lynda if you had to choose between the two?
As a photographer, wow. In terms of just learning WordPress?
Yeah, I mean, assuming that you have your technical photography stuff under, and this is the area in which you need help, which resources, would be better?
Well, honestly, what I feel like has been most useful to a lot of my clients has been the video user manuals, which is just step-by-step WordPress dashboard videos that I can install in their WordPress dashboard.
Yep.
You mean like the WP 101 type thing? Or is it something that you made?
No. Video user manuals is a WordPress tutorial. Yeah, it's video user manuals is the URL. Okay. And their kind of tagline is still wasting time training your clients to use WordPress. Now, this does require you have a developer who has subscribed to these tutorial videos, but you basically install a plugin in the WordPress dashboard, and now your client has access to all these incremental tutorials on things like how to insert an image on a page, how to use the visual editor, what all the general settings are in WordPress. And so I like that as a resource because the lynda.coms and Team Treehouse, it's a lot of time commitment for people to go through.
Right, yes.
And it's so much to absorb when they're just like, hey, I just want to hyperlink some text.
Yeah. Yep.
That's all I want to do. And the video user manuals allow them to just go straight to that video and watch it. Or you can tell them which video to watch. So in terms of the end users, I think WP Beginner has some great video tutorials that are entirely free on the WordPress dashboard. I think Bob WP has incredible materials for end users.
I really like Bob WP too, and he speaks again to that older generation that we're talking about, those people in transition, and he really speaks in lots of different languages. He takes the advanced information and brings it back down. I really like him.
He'll be at WordCamp US as well.
Yeah.
So before we were talking about WordCamp. Before we started recording, we were talking about WordCamp US and how I will not be there, but both Scott and Angela will be.
Yep. It's gonna be fun. WordCamp US is in Philly. I think we talked about this last episode too. WordCamp US. Actually, by the time this airs, it might even be after WordCamp US. But anyway, so December 2nd, and I believe is the date of WordCamp US, and it's where Matt Mullenweg does his big State of the Word.
Right.
And I went last year. It was a lot of fun. I'm excited to go this year again. And then next year it's going to be in Nashville. So.
Wow, well, it's fun. Like the WPPI for photographers. It's the big get-together for WordPress communities all over the world.
It's big. WordCamp US is a big. It's the biggest, or one of the biggest, I should say, in the US for sure. So what else do you have going on?
Well, Angela, I actually had a follow-up question for you because you have worked with artists. Have there been, and I know this is beyond just straight photographers, but have there been challenges that you see coming up over and over outside of training and communication, but unique needs that they have for their websites that you don't necessarily encounter with a typical small business owner?
What I've started to do with artists is I've created these small workshops for artists. So I get 5 artists together, and I'll take them step by step through how to build their WordPress site using a user-friendly theme. And it's amazing that they're able to do it, and they're able to set their styles and select Google fonts and things like that. So the biggest issue that happens for, I think, all users and artists in particularly is they go to someplace like Theme Forest and they find a theme.
Yes.
Or someone has set them up with like Genesis or some other theme that it's just really hard for them to maintain their work. And so great, they have a pretty site, but they can't, it's too difficult for them to upload their new artwork.
Yeah.
And then the Theme Forest themes are just so all over the map. Just being able to get the theme to work like the demo has promised is a challenge. And once a month, I do one-on-one consulting with people. I kind of have office hours at this at Boulder Digital Arts, and I sit in the conference room, and I see 5 people, one right after another. And I don't know what they're going to come in with. They're just going to come in with their questions. And usually it's, how do I get this Theme Forest theme to work? And so that's the biggest challenge for people. And I get a significant number of artists. And when I had encountered all these artists, I work in a place that's full of art studios. I'm like one of the only artists here. I mean, the office people here. So everyone around me has an art studio. And they're all like, oh, you do WordPress. I need to fix my site. And a lot of them already had WordPress sites. They just couldn't manage it.
Right.
So I just kind of simplified it and got them going on something that they each could have a very unique look. They could all learn, and then they could all easily update their portfolios.
Yeah. Now, before we started chatting, recording, you had mentioned the difference between what you find with artist websites and photographer websites is in terms of portfolio-based versus gallery-based. Do you want to sort of talk a little bit more about that and the challenges or solutions that you found for photographers specifically, you know, working with galleries and uploading images, and any tips and tricks for them?
Yeah, so the difference between a lot of artists and photographers is photographers need content management for a huge number of images.
Yeah.
And it's such an entirely different need than the visual art, the other types of artists. So artists need a portfolio, and often their portfolio will involve also having an image gallery. So your typical artist might have an installation, or they might have a series of work. And that's going to be represented by one image in like a portfolio grid. And then when you click through on that image, you might then go to a page that has a gallery of images that represents that installation or close-ups of the piece, or if you're a sculptor, different angles of the sculpture. And that's really different from photographers who need to manage, you know, maybe 100 images related to one particular topic, like the Grand Canyon. And for the photographers, it really does come down to like a sort of content management for their images. And the confusion out there in the community is that everyone thinks they need a gallery plugin. Well, they kind of do, but there's no gallery plugins that provide true image management other than NextGEN Gallery. And, or if they do, they're kind of a little bit of ripoffs of NextGEN Gallery, and they don't work as well, so why bother? But I think that's the thing that photographers might get confused by is, you know, the difference between a gallery plugin versus a true content management system for their photographs.
Yeah. I see that a lot. A lot of photographers saying, you know, why should I use yours? You know, and why should I use NextGEN instead of XYZ? And it's funny because, as you said, a lot of them are trying to do what NextGEN Gallery does, but they're not doing it in the same way. And it's funny because whenever we hear the people say, NextGEN Gallery isn't the easiest to use, it's not photographers.
Yes, it's not photographers.
It's not
so
photographers.
They shouldn't use it. So with my artists who need these little like micro galleries or whatever you'd call it about their individual installation pieces, I'll usually have them use Envira because that's simple, it's easy, and they don't have much of a problem with it, and they don't need all that image management ability. The problem with Envira Gallery is there isn't a separation between display and content. So, or display and, it's like it's not a content management system for images. And when the display is tied to the collection of images, that's a problem because now you can only display these images in this one way unless you duplicate them into another gallery.
Right.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of conversation too about gallery plugins versus themes with galleries. So like in the photography space, there's a Pro Photo theme. I don't know if you've ever come across it, but its function is to be not only the theme, but also the gallery part of it. So it's really interesting in that there's a lot of information coming at photographers specifically whose business is to sell images. And so how do you display them? How do you keyword them? How do you easily archive them and have them in your website? And I think when you talk about CMS, we should probably bring it back to that stands for Content Management System, which WordPress is a content management system. And then to make it more sort of granular as photographers, having a gallery plugin can help you to organize those images and then display them in different ways even more. So, it's interesting when people talk about websites and photographers and they don't think they have unique needs. Yeah. But I think they do.
They totally have unique needs. And when photographers get into using some of these solutions, they quickly discover well, how can I just have a collection of all my Grand Canyon photos?
Right.
And then sometimes I want to display them here, and then I also want to be able to display some of them here, but not all of them. And that's where with NextGen, it's great that you can tag the images, and then you can get a collection of tags. So,
or you can insert a gallery and just exclude certain images. Visually.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that ability to manage your images separate from how you might display them is both the great thing about NextGEN Gallery, but also a hard concept too.
Right.
Yep. So, I was teaching this class on NextGEN Gallery and Eric Danzer would come to the class. What do we call him? The owner, the CEO of Photocron Imagely. Both, everything. He's everything. But he was so sweet to come to my class, bring cookies, answer questions. He didn't understand why there needed to be a class. And then once he came to my class, he was like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he tries to go to, I think, each one that you do because, one, he wants to support you because you're teaching our product, which is amazing. But you're also teaching other gallery plugins, which I think is a great thing, so that everybody sees the diversity between and differences, and they can make up their own minds. But I think he also wants to get feedback right from the people that are seeing what they can do with the product. So he walks away. And
he's taken all the feedback and implemented it. Which is amazing. Every single piece. He's just there scribbling notes the whole time and making I'm sure the development team crazy. Like, hey, we got to make all these changes.
Yeah, we actually had to restructure our development to keep up with all the feedback we get and come up with ways to figure out which needs to be the priority and for the next release and so on. So we actually do some restructuring to keep up with it, which is a good thing.
Well, talk about a user group, right? I mean, I think that's why having these conversations in group settings like podcast and then, going to, what is the word? The teaching thing courses. Thank you. That was my senior moment, guys. So having these places where we can congregate and talk about the questions that we have, then they can be implemented as changes in next releases. I mean, I think that's the best part of open source for all of this, for NextGEN Gallery, for WordPress as a whole. Like, that's what I love the most about it, is that these conversations don't just happen in a bubble. They also happen in, like, results happen from it, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
That's the best part.
Well, I'm planning to just put that entire course, all my notes, everything that I know about NextGen, just online for free.
That'd be awesome.
Because the class I was just doing twice a year, and it used to fill up. I used to always get like at least 15 people in it, not as many people now. And I'm not sure exactly why that is, but it's valuable information, and I'd rather just get it out there and then get feedback and provide some tips and tricks and then, then I'd be the famous person for providing free NextGen Gallery tutorials. And someone had done that. So back in the day, there were people who wrote very detailed, thorough NextGen Gallery tutorials, because in a way you needed it, because at the time we didn't have the fancy options that we have now with the pro version. So with the free version, you really needed a lot of technical information about how to work with templates and CSS and things to make NextGen look pretty and all of that. And now that's kind of not needed, but there is still something needed to help walk people through how to work with albums effectively and just
I think that's one of the confusing things that some photographers face is at least when looking at the different gallery plugins, because even the ones like Envira and Foo Gallery and that started using our gallery versus album concept. In the photography world, an album is not what it is in gallery plugin. So it's a little confusing. I actually wish that we could actually adopt Lightroom's terminology, collections and collection sets. However, it's we're way beyond that, because NextGen started with galleries and albums, when the first developer originally had it. So we're way beyond the ability to do that. But in the a lot of photographers look at it and say, well, are you actually giving me like a book, like an album? Like, is that what I'm doing?
When you said, I mean, that's always the first thing I think of, because part of being a photographer, especially in the commercial portrait, even, if you're shooting landscape, whatever you're selling, you sell that in the form of prints and albums. So to hear this web terminology with the album, words, it sort of is like, wait, where am I? What world am I in? Because you're already, as a photographer, switching hats 1,000 times a day anyway. So
it might actually be even better just to call it gallery and gallery set. Or
I like
gallery collection.
And that seems like just a string replacement you'd have to do in the software.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it would be so easy for us to just add an option so you can call it whatever you want to call it. But, it's one of those things like, is that something that everybody would appreciate or not? We'd have to figure that out. So, but yeah, so there's a lot of, there's some learning curves like that you need to come up with when you're using a gallery plugin, whoever it is. So
and there's just so many. I think NextGen just does so much. There's so much, so that when you get into the interface, it really does take some working with to kind of absorb here, not there, or if I've done it here, I've got to keep doing it here. Otherwise, like when you insert a gallery on a page or a post, you've made some decisions in that process. For example, sort order. So if you go back to the Manage Galleries interface outside the post in the kind of central command area, and you try to resort your images and go back to your page and they still have the old sort, it's like, no, once the gallery's on the page, you need to sort it there or reinsert the gallery.
Right. Now that's different, because now we switched to visual shortcodes.
Yes.
So with the shortcodes, the sort will obey your default sort order for that gallery.
Okay.
You can override it in the insert gallery window.
Yeah. And if you do that and you go back to Manage Galleries to do the sort,
then it will match up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll play with it.
And we're getting very technical.
And that's very technical. But it is the place, I work with a lot of photographers, and it is the place where they get most confused.
Right.
Yep.
It's like, where do I go to do this? And so I'd say one tip for photographers working with NextGen Gallery is get your default settings set ahead of time.
Yep.
Like before you start inserting galleries all over the place, insert one gallery, figure out what you want, your padding, your borders, your thumbnail dimensions, all of those things, set that in your default settings. And now every time you insert a gallery, you have it, and you don't have to make those setting changes every time. So that's my big tip.
And make sure you have resize and upload and backups turned on.
Definitely.
Because that's going to be useful for when you start doing digital downloads with NextGEN Pro. That's going to be useful when you start doing Print Lab integration, which is still in the works and it's coming along. So make sure you have those on too, because those are important.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, so this kind of moves us into our next segment, which is guest recommended WordPress plugins and or themes. So we've talked about NextGEN Gallery. Are there any other resources that you recommend specific that you think photographers would want to use?
Oh, that's a really good question. I made a couple notes of some of my favorite recent plugins here. I just really took a look at Beaver Builder plugin. And Beaver Builder allows you to do kind of complex layouts within any theme. And so if a photographer perhaps has an old website, maybe they're even on just a basic default WordPress theme, so they might have their gallery pages, which are gorgeous because they're filled with their photos, but they have a home page that's just kind of generic. They might try something like Beaver Builder to, or work with a developer who has Beaver Builder to just, create a more fancy homepage layout. So that's a plugin that I've liked working with. Of course, all the image optimization plugins are helpful, but you have to be careful. Image optimization, of course, becomes huge when you're working, with a lot of images. It's so hard because I find this is more of something I bring to more of the typical WordPress user, not necessarily the photographer, because what I'd say with photographers is they really should be optimizing and setting all their image resizing ahead of time in Lightroom or Photoshop. Don't be uploading images that that are way too large that aren't optimized for web.
Yeah, and we actually recommend JPEG Mini, which is something so you can bring it out of Lightroom. Photographers have resources like Blogstomp or Fundy to do image collaging, renaming, and then pulling it through JPEG Mini. So part of being a photographer is having that workflow before you upload, and then by the time that it's on the web, you've already optimized it. So I do. But there are great image optimization plugins too. So it really is what fits in with what your workflow. Yeah,
the workflow, but also just, I work with photographers who are so picky. They don't want to see any artifacting in their images at all.
Right.
And you run it through Smush or something, they're going to be horrified.
Even the basic, when WordPress, Scott, what version was it? Was it 4.5 when it
they increased the compression?
Yeah. So I've had a lot of photographers noticed that and had to go to their host and ask them to put code in to say, can you change the base image compression back up to 80 from 60 or wherever it went to? So yeah, absolutely. Any kind of image compression they notice right away.
So one thing that I could say that applies to all WordPress users and photographers is Ssl encryption. And it's something that's just becoming a bigger deal and maybe, affecting SEO ranking. And so I'm big into search engine optimization, and anything that artists can do, photographers can do to really put in their alt text on their images and make sure they're making good use of that. But the SSL encryption, the plugin that I recommend for that, if they do install an SSL certificate on their web hosting account, which has become easier and easier to do. The problem is people will sign up for the SSL certificate on their web host because every time they log into their hosting control panel, it's being sold to them.
Right.
Secure your site. It's a great idea, but then things can happen in the WordPress dashboard that don't make that work so well. So the plugin I recommend is the Really Simple SSL plugin. Just called Really Simple SSL. I've seen people use older Force SSL plugins and things and really break their sites totally. So that works really well. And then they just need to go into Settings General and set their URL to use the HTTPS instead of HTTP. And then the really simple SSL plugin will kind of force everything to use the new HTTPS.
Yeah.
And so that's, definitely if they need help with that, they could reach out to a local developer or their web host even, and be able to get that set up.
Yeah.
What do you feel like are the things in NextGen that have changed over the course of the past couple years to help improve SEO for your images?
To help improve. Oh, so we
like in terms of just alt text and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we've some of the galleries originally didn't include alt text.
Yeah.
Before we acquired it, and now they do. So that's a biggie. We also integrated with Yoast SEO, so it's
nice.
Huge.
integrates with the Yoast sitemaps. And they're also whitelisted from the Open Graph. So I got to explain that a little bit. So first, with the sitemaps, it used to be that you would have a separate image sitemap from your post and page sitemap. It would be completely different files that Google would see. Google then recommended including the images in the actual main post and page sitemaps. So Yoast does this by default for anything inserted with the media library. And this is standard media library. This I don't even think this works with all. I know it works with Foo Gallery, but I don't think it works with all the others. So we integrated with that with the older placeholder. Now here's the catch with the older placeholder images. And so before we recently switched to visual shortcodes, anything with a placeholder image was automatically included in the sitemap.
And was that in the media sitemap that Yoast creates?
Yeah, not the media sitemap, the main one, the post and pages and all that stuff. There'll be an image count, and it'll include any NextGEN Gallery images that you have will be included in that count. And if you actually looked at the source code of the sitemap, you would see all of your images showing up in that sitemap.
The images that are in NextGEN Gallery.
In NextGEN Gallery, that you're including on that poster page. We switched to visual shortcodes, and that actually stopped working. So now we have to reintegrate with the visual shortcode part of it, which is not a big deal. We're already doing it for the next release, so no problem. The other thing was the placeholder images were coming up in Open Graph. So this isn't SEO specific, but it's sort of connects.
Yeah.
So the placeholder image that said NextGEN Gallery Edit would actually show up in Facebook if you shared that post, right?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So we actually had to prohibit that image from showing up in Open Graph. We did that. That was a biggie as well. With visual shortcodes, that's not a problem at all because there's no actual image for it to show up. In just because the Open Graph, if you don't designate an image for Open Graph, Yoast will actually just pick one, the first on the page. So when it was the placeholder image,
that happens a lot. Depending, I think theme files too can also do that. So for people that are out there and they're saying, "Oh my gosh, that happens in my Facebook," it's like not just specific,
theme, right?
Right. So it's not just specific to NextGEN plugin. But it could be any plugin. It could be your theme itself. It could be, but Yoast SEO, if you go into Yoast SEO, has a place to override all of it, so that you can upload a generic, your photography logo, business logo there, so you don't get these other random ones. So if that's resonating with you, there are solutions, and it's not usually because of NextGEN. I mean, that's something that you guys fixed and you're aware of, but it happens with all sorts of plugins and themes.
SEO ends up being, the biggest deal for photographers in a lot of ways. They have this beautiful work and they're like, I'm not found.
Right.
And often it's because they have no text on their website. Right. It's all images. And so for me, working with photographers, getting them to write about their work and describe their work in a way that we can optimize and break out some of their work into more pages or posts so that we can get more indexed content. Is really a challenge because photographers are visual people. They're not writers.
Right.
And so, if they can partner with someone who will interview them and get them to write, would be great. But I'd say that's a challenge. And then learning some of these little SEO tricks, which I'm so excited to check out Yoast and NextGEN Gallery, because I actually haven't done that, even though I teach a course using Yoast.
Yeah, just remember, right now it's only the placeholder images. So the last few versions, since we switched to visual shortcodes, that part is not working. We're rebuilding it.
But the open graph and sharing, because photographers need to be able to share their work and using things like Facebook and Instagram. And so one plugin that I have been excited about is there's an Instagram feed plugin. So we could put that in the show notes. If they use Instagram, you can bring in all of your Instagram images onto a page in WordPress. And if you pay for the pro version, people can interact and comment on those images right on your WordPress page.
Oh, that's cool.
It's very cool for visual artists and for photographers.
That's called Instagram feed?
Yeah, it's Instagram. I'll give you the direct link to it.
Sure.
But and it's definitely worth getting the. I think it's just Instagram feed. Okay. Yep, I have it favorites by Smashballoon. Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Angela. I think this has been really, really helpful. Is there anything else in your world that you want to talk about? Where can we find you on the web?
You can find me at AskWPGirl.com, and AskWPGirl on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. And I love to connect with people and hear from artists, and I hope to get that NextGen free tutorials out soon.
That would be great.
Awesome.
Yeah. I will say, anybody who's interested, any photographers that are interested in learning more about WordPress, and you happen to be in the Boulder, Denver area, be sure to check out Angela's classes, because she's extremely knowledgeable, as you have heard, and it'll be a good learning experience for you to get your hands dirty with everything you need to know about your photography website. So, so thank you, Angela, for joining us today. Thank you, Rachel, for being an awesome co-host.
Thank you, Scott.
You can find the show notes from today's episode at imagely.com/podcast/29.
29. So 30 is our next podcast, and we'll be doing Q&A. So Scott and I will be going back and forth with your questions. Thank you for submitting those. Yep. And then we'll have another guest in 31.
Oh yeah,
wonderful.
Man. It's we've almost been doing this for a year, Rachel.
Yeah, I think December will be 1 year. I think it's a great journey we've been on.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So
okay, it's great to meet you both.
Thank you.
Yep. Until next time.
Okay, bye.
You've been listening to the WordPress Photography Podcast. To listen to other episodes and to subscribe to the podcast via iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more, please visit imagely.com/podcast.